I recently wrote an article for The Guardian online. The following is an edited version of that article. I would like to state that anyone who uses the comments section of this video as a medium to viciously attack the beliefs of others will be blocked. It is, however, open to reasoned debates. Religious beliefs are unevenly distributed geographically. I must point out that scientific beliefs aren't. If you're born in India, you'll most likely be a Hindu or a Sikh. If you're born in Palestine, you'll most likely be a Muslim. And if you're born in Mississippi, you'll most likely be a Christian. This fact alone presents religion as a game of chance. A game of chance that will hopefully soon be ended, before humanity subjects itself to unnecessary means to fight for fictional characters like Allah, Zeus, or Santa Claus. It must also be stated that the current religions are merely reincarnations, if you excuse my delusion, of previous forgotten religions. The story of a man who was born of a virgin and was resurrected was a story that was floating around the Mediterranean almost 1,000 years before Christianity. We have Krishna, who was in India almost 1,000 years before Christ existed. He was a carpenter, he was born of a virgin, and he was baptized in a river. We also have the Persian god Mithra, 600 years before Christ, who was born on December 25th, he performed miracles, he resurrected on the third day, he was known as the Lamb, the Way, the Truth, the Light, the Saviour, and the Messiah, and let's not forget the Egyptian god Horus, who has the exact biography as Christ, bar the name, yet he was created in 1600 BC. There is a clear link between religion and morality that is everywhere in our culture. It really underlines the idea that without religion, something would be lost to us in moral terms. This really is questionable when you look at the books. The truth is, and to speak specifically about the Bible for the moment, the truth is that not even an Orthodox Jew or a fundamentalist Christian can take God for his word. Given how sadistic God is in books like Leviticus or Deuteronomy or Exodus, say you were going to draw a to-do list out of a book like Leviticus, you would make Mullah Omar of the Al-Qaeda look like Peter Pan. It paints a vision of life so needlessly horrible, so subversive of the basic project of creating and sustaining a society where human happiness is put first, that we have effectively edited the Bible. Even fundamentalists have. It's important to point out that nobody ever says that these passages are immoral. Say you find out that a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, you have to stone her to death. You have to stone homosexuals to death. If your kids answer back after an argument about the PlayStation, you have to stone them to death too. And if you go into a town and find someone praying to a foreign god, well, you have to kill him, you have to kill his family, and why not just everyone else in the town? These are not metaphors. They are not analogies. They are explicit directives to kill people for theological crimes. Yet no one ever says that this is immoral. Christians just say that they don't have to do this anymore because Jesus brought them the doctrine of grace. Well, incidentally, Jesus also said that every word of the law has to be fulfilled, so you can't have it both ways. Creationists are often considered the most mentally ill of the Christian followers. They believe in Genesis and that the world was created by a supernatural God. At this juncture, I would like to quote Penn Jillette. And he says that reading and understanding biblical texts can do nothing but make you an atheist. I feel this is true for so many religions, especially the Bible and the Quran, both of which I've not only read, but studied and now understand. There are clear lies in both, lies which destroy the moral foundations of the religions at hand. For instance, in Genesis, Adam and Eve gave birth to two sons, Cain and Abel. But the question must be asked, where did the human race go from here? Talking in delusion, of course, if Adam and Eve only gave birth to Cain and Abel, and the Bible is explicit that they did and that they were the only humans on earth at the time, then either Eve was impregnated by one of her sons, which would have meant that the human race was based solely on incest, or more likely, Genesis, and all that is in it, is a lie. Dun dun dun. If these are the best books we have, and in terms of sales they probably are, but from the point of view of fundamentalists, the Bible and the Quran are the best books we have, as they've literally been dictated from the creators of the universe. If the Bible is the best book that we have in the West, we should be practicing slavery. The creator of the universe clearly expects us to keep slaves. He simply tells us not to beat slaves so severely that we rip out their eyes and their teeth. Jesus clearly expected us to keep slaves. He even uses analogies with slaves and never once criticized the institution of using slaves. Paul in 1 Timothy tells slaves to serve their masters well, and to serve their Christian masters especially well, so that they can partake in their holiness. If this is the best book we have, the slaveholders of the south of the US were right. And on so many other questions this is true. If this is the best book we have, we should be beating our children with rods. And in America, men and women are beating their children. Last year alone in Alabama, 40,000 kids were beaten with paddles in their schools. Beaten by a faith-based initiative. The fact that the biblical God created hell and then used it to threaten mankind into submission denies any chance that this deity possessed anything remotely resembling a sense of moral decency. If we were listing religions in terms of believability and credibility, Islam and the Muslim religion comes last. Some believe that Osama bin Laden was incorrectly recommunicating the Quran. This is in fact incorrect. Many split hairs about when an apostate should be killed. However, the fact is that an apostate is still put to death. For those who are unsure of the term apostate, an apostate is a member of a belief system who decides to leave. In the Muslim religion, apostasy, or leaving the Muslim religion, is still, to this day, punishable by death. This fact alone is misconstrued and denied by those who are indoctrinated in the Muslim belief system. The literal fact that you cannot leave the religion without the punishment of death singularly destroys any reasoning that the Muslim faith could be considered a religion of free will. For instance, where are the Tibetan Buddhist suicide bombers? And if you are thinking for a moment that the kind of violence that we see in the Muslim world is born of the Israeli occupation and our misadventures in Iraq, we should see Tibetan suicide bombers. The Tibetans have suffered an occupation every bit as brutal and far more cynical than any that we, the US, or the Israelis have imposed upon the Muslim world. Something like 1.2 million Tibetans have died since the Chinese occupation. But where are the hordes of Tibetans in the streets calling for the deaths of Chinese non-combatants? Where are the Tibetans blowing themselves up on Chinese buses at weddings in crowds of children in front of the offices of the Red Cross and the UN? It's not happening, and it's not likely to happen. And it's not that you couldn't possibly form a death poll out of the principles of Tibetan Buddhism. In fact, to some degree, Zen Buddhism informed the worldview of kamikaze pilots in World War II. But you would have to work very, very hard to bend the core principles of Buddhism into this kind of orgy of violence. You don't have to work as hard as a Muslim. And it would be impossible as a Jain. The Jains, and Jain is a religion in India with some 10 million subscribers. The core of their religion is non-violence. No matter how deranged you get by your doctrine as a Jain, you'll become less and less violent. The really religious Jains cover their mouths with cheese gloss so that they don't accidentally inhale and kill a bug. By no stretch of the imagination can you argue that the core principle of Islam is non-violent. I must point out that I'm not talking about race or ethnicity, I'm talking about the consequences of ideas. When I'm talking about Islam, I'm talking about John Walker Lind, the white guy from Marin County in the US who went off to fight with the Taliban. To digress briefly, we are at war with Islamic fundamentalism, not merely Al-Qaeda, not extremist Islam. The mainstream doctrine of Islam contains this notion of martyrdom and jihad. It contains this imperative to convert, subjugate or kill infidels. Anyone who says it doesn't has either not read the Quran or the Hadith, or they are lying about them. If you doubt this, and I'm sure that there are people listening who believe that it can't possibly be religion and there must be a lack of economic opportunity or a lack of education opportunity in the Muslim world, just contemplate for a moment. the biographies of the 19 men who woke up on September 11th, 2001 and decided to slit the throats of stewardesses and fly planes into buildings, killing hundreds of Americans. These guys were college educated. Many of them had PhDs, many of them had been educated in the West. They were middle class or better. I don't know how many architects or engineers need to hit the wall at 400 miles per hour for us to get into our heads that this is not merely a problem of education or economics. These were not guys who spent a lot of time agitating about regime change in the Middle East. These were guys who spent an inordinate amount of time in their local mosques in Hamburg talking about the pleasures that await martyrs in paradise and demonizing infidel culture. The circumstance we are in is far more sinister than many want to realize. The circumstance we are in is far more sinister than many want to realize. It is possible to be so well educated that you can build a nuclear warhead and still think that you're going to get 72 virgins in paradise. That is how partitioned the human mind is, and it shows how vulcanized our discourse is. That is how immune religious propositions are to critical pressure, conversational pressure in our discourse. 40% of scientists believe in a biblical God. This does not mean that there is a good scientific reason to believe in a biblical God. It just suggests that 60% of scientists aren't doing their job. There really is an argument to be won with the extension of the sciences. The best part of challenging a fundamentalist's belief system is watching them follow an evidentiary pursuit. They will say things like the New Testament confirms all of the Old Testament prophecy, or every prophecy in the Bible comes true. These are spacious claims from people who either have not read the doctrine of their faith or did not understand it. In summation, I would like to quote Richard Dawkins. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all works of fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic racist, an infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, malevolent bully. But you must love him. Thank goodness he doesn't exist. I still have enough material to make a second part to this talk. If you'd like to hear it, please thumbs up the video. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.